Hello, Park High School.
I'm Katrina.
And I'm Caitlin. And these are your daily announcements.
Please rise for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Seniors. The virtual senior meeting, originally scheduled for April 21st, is postponed until Monday, May 10th. Payment for the $30 graduation fee will open on Smart School beginning April 21st and closes for payment on June 4th at 3 p.m. If you are interested in speaking at the graduation ceremony as a single person or duo, please sign up with Ms. Diamond in the main office. Deadline to sign up is Tuesday, April 27th.
These has been your daily announcements, Park High School.
And to have a monumental Monday.
Announcements probably were applicable to seniors, most likely, with that piece. Okay. So with that, let's skip over that. How was our weekend? Got any highlights? Any highlights that you can share, or lowlights? Like someone in my first hour shared, low light was more about soccer. Oh, Minnesota United losing, yeah. We're talking 4-0 loss to Seattle. Yeah, okay. Important thing is first game of the season. First match. All right, anyone else? Big stuff? All right. Okay, someone talked about last hour a prom. They went to prom, Woodbury's prom, but they went to prom. All that. I guess, maybe a highlight for me was my daughter decided she didn't want to go to prom. So the Newcomb family decided to go out and sit down and have a dinner together at a restaurant. So that's like our first big time, as my wife and daughter had said, that was the first time they actually sat in a restaurant since spring break of last year when they were out there. And I think we're looking at South Carolina. So nice to have a little sit down as a family, more than at a place like McDonald's. So we actually sat down where, you had a good meal. Not to say McDonald's doesn't have a decent meal, but this one was a good meal. But I think, going to the place, because we went to Holman's Table. Has anyone been to Holman's Table? All right, it's in downtown St. Paul. It is actually at the airport known as Holman's Airport. It's in the old building that was kind of like the air traffic controller area and where you would catch a plane. But to get there, though, there was a National Guard checkpoint. And we're pulling up. I'm like, what the heck's going on here? There's a National Guard headquarters or armory there. But there was a checkpoint. I just said, we're just going to go to the restaurant. And she's like, all happy. And it's like, oh, yeah, go ahead. But you could see a line of vehicles. And then it occurred to me as we're pulling up, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's part of Operation Safety Net. Operation Safety Net. Have you heard of that? Operation Safety Net. Okay, Zach telling you, huh? All right, what is it?
If I'm correct, isn't it just more blocking areas down where protests would most likely either come through, or I don't know the full details. I have a family in the military, but they're part of a different operation currently. So
okay, all right.
From what I've heard, it's just more of locking down certain areas to keep protests down and quick response time if protests should arise in that area.
Okay, so it is related to potential protests. All right, and let's think of that. We've had protests? Okay, and what's the protest related to? I mean, it doesn't have to be Zach, it can be anyone. All right. And it's okay that we talk about it. What's the protest over? In the Twin Cities. Yeah, Dante Wright. All right, Dante Wright. And Dante Wright was shot where? Do we know where? At the community? Yeah, Brooklyn Center. All right, Brooklyn Center. And you know, I thought about Brooklyn Center because getting involved in teaching in the first place, one of my first jobs actually was at Brooklyn Center High School. I wasn't a teacher, I was more support staff, and very close to where Dante Wright was shot and killed. And you know, it sparked a riot or protesting. But in response is if we think back to a year ago, around this time, close to this time, I should say, you had George Floyd, and we had rioting in the Twin Cities as a result of that shooting. And this is a big week in Minnesota because of the trial, right? The Chauvin trial. And it looks like the jury will be deliberating this week over taking into consideration the evidence and weigh in on those 3 charges against Derek Chauvin. So this could be a potentially big week. All right. Have you gone around the Twin Cities and seen National Guard? And how does that make you feel when you see the National Guard? Let's talk about that. How does that make you feel when you see the National Guard? This isn't the first time I've seen the National Guard throughout our community, and I consider the metropolitan area our community. It's not the first time that I've seen it. And every time I see them, it does create a little anxiousness. I think the first time I remember seeing National Guard was there was a truck driver strike that got violent at the refinery in St. Paul Park. And National Guard is called out. And so some of the people probably are like, oh, that's my social studies teacher there, you know, in the National Guard, Mr. Fritsch was it. I guess the next time, you know, that I've seen the National Guard with a presence was at the airport during 9/11. And then, of course, this past weekend, and there'll be other times that I've seen them. I've seen convoys go up and down Highway 61 at times. But how does that make you feel? All right, Zach, come on.
I guess it kind of builds up anxiety because you know that at some point something might spill over. Something might happen. There's that anxiety of will something happen and when will something happen?
Okay. Something might happen. Is there potential something might happen?
Yes.
Absolutely. Now, Operation Safety Net was already a plan in place, but it was implemented sooner than they anticipated. They implemented it because of what happened with Dante Wright. And now, so this week, it would have really been put into place here, which is like stage 3. Stage 4, I have no idea. Of course, they're not probably going to tell us what stage 4 is. But you know, I think of this, and when this and last year, and I text my mentor and just say, what I see happening in the Twin Cities is very similar to what happened in 1992 during the race riots. That was with the Rodney King, and the police officers had gotten off, and then And then, of course, a few years later, we're going to have O.J. Simpson and that as well. And the tension that it did create. So, all right. Now, how about this? If we segue into our activity that we have, or the civil rights movement that we're looking at. Issues then, similar to issues today. I think we can find a lot of similarities. What would, based on our homework, what would Malcolm X or Martin Luther King Jr. think? What would they think? What do we think? How do they respond to what's going on? What do you got?
It would probably like policy tools that would be like very against that. Probably influence people, you know, blah, blah, blah.
Okay. All right. What else? All right. So Dr. King would advocate peaceful protests. All right. Do you think he would have showed up on the scene? Because that's more like Dr. King. He's a person of action. To encounter. Would he be outraged? Heck yeah, he'd be outraged as well. You know, I think back 1947, they come out with and I've said it before, to secure these rights, document by the Civil Rights Commission, and one of them was about police brutality. Still very, some would say very applicable today. What about Malcolm X? What about Malcolm X? Remember, he says ballot or the bullet. He's defined by that speech. He gave a lot of other speeches as well. Would he be outraged? Heck yeah, he'd be outraged. Would he call for action? What kind? What's that? Yes, most likely aggressive. Doesn't mean it's going to turn into full-scale violent, but aggressive. Aggressive action. Remember, he says, you slap me, I'll slap you back. So he would be very, very aggressive here as well. All right. So we look at these individuals here, and they're very effective. They're very effective in their approaches, and they have who could say their base. All right, if we want to use that word, base. They have their base, and they know how to use it. All right, but by 1968, both of them are no longer going to be on the scene because they die violently as well. They both are assassinated. Who assassinates, if you know, Malcolm X? He is killed by 3 members of the Nation of Islam. Before Malcolm X dies, he had broke away from the Nation of Islam. He had a little falling out with Elijah Muhammad, and a lot of it happens after his trip to the Holy Land. For Martin Luther King Jr., he is assassinated by Earl Ray, I want to say, and he passed away in prison a couple decades ago, but he had passed away. Again, both of them have a violent way of dying. So their voice is silenced. Now, who's going to pick up the mantle, though, if we want to say that? Who picks up the mantle? Who's going to fill the vacuum for these individuals. All right, we're going to have some organizations out there. We'll have other people that try to fill the place, but it's pretty hard to fill the shoes of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. I mean, they're two very, larger than life individuals here. So there is a group out there that's going to form about 1966, 67-ish, around that time, known as the Black Panthers. Okay, and so I got a little video clip here because this is going to lead us into Black activism. And we start seeing the message begin to change as we approach the mid-60s here. All right, and so this message, this video clip that we have is going to highlight a little bit of the Black Panthers and some of the other issues as well. Okay, see if we get some takeaways from it. All right, looks like we need a little energy boost here.
There's an old story, and it's used in various cultures, where a group of blind men approach an elephant and try to describe him. The first man approaches the elephant, touches its side, and says, "It feels like a wall." The next man touches the tusk and says, "The elephant must be like a spear." Another blind man touches the trunk and says, "It feels like a snake." And that is quite often what happens with our descriptions of the Black Panther Party. We know the party we were in and not the entire thing. We were making history, and it wasn't nice and clean. It wasn't easy, it was complex.
From Chicago, Illinois, the mighty Charlotte.
For God's sake, give more power to the people. There's some people up there holding everything.
The thing that led to the Panthers was what we were seeing on television every day: attack dogs, fire hoses, bombings.
We stand on the eve of a black revolution, brothers.
Now we have the emergence of voices within the community that were saying we're not going to continue to turn the other cheek.
You tell them white folk in Mississippi that all the scared niggas are dead. We want black power. We want black power.
This was a revolutionary time. 50 countries in the world gained their independence in the decade before the founding of the Black Panther Party. This is the time when people are getting drafted to go and fight in Vietnam. So if somebody's coming and saying, well, if you're going to fight, why not fight right here in LA or Oakland? You know, that made a lot of sense.
We couldn't be absent and see what we saw. We couldn't unsee it. I was a cocktail waitress in a white strip club 2 years before I joined the Black Panther Party. How did that happen? The rage was in the streets. It was everywhere.
We're not gonna get nothing. Not by sitting around here doing these sit-in demonstrations and nothing. People not gonna do anything. Well, how are we gonna do it? By violence. Violence. By uprising, having a revolution. Just put blood, you know, let everybody bleed a little bit.
For God's sake, why don't you give more power to
Relations between police and Negroes throughout the country are getting worse. One of the cities most troubled by animosity between police and Negroes is Oakland, California.
People always talk about freedom and what that means. During that time period, being black in America meant that you didn't walk down the street with the same sense of safety and the same sense of privilege as a white person.
There was absolutely no difference in the way the police treated us in Mississippi than they did in California. They may not have called you nigger every day, but they treated you the same way they did in Mississippi.
Police jump on you, beat you up, put the gun at your head. This is what we were going through on a daily basis.
When I first met Huey and Bobby, they were in the process of forming an organization for primarily self-defense. We didn't plan to have a nationwide organization or anything like that. We were organized and dealing with the problems in Oakland.
We use the Black Panther as our symbol because of the nature of a panther. A panther doesn't strike anyone, but when he's assailed upon, that he'll back up first. But if the aggressor continues, then he'll strike out.
Video, and in our activity today, we'll see more. You'll have a few more video clips there. But with that, any immediate reactions to that? Yeah, go ahead. Right. So what that member of the Black Panther Party was referencing is that prior to them forming in 1966 as a party, he was just given historical context that there has been already, like, since World War II, about 50 countries that has gained their independence, have fought against who they would say their oppressor is. And so in some ways using that energy from those movements and then applying it to their organization that they're going to create, known as the Black Panther Party. All right, any other questions or comments? So if the clip was just on the Black Panther Party, what was one of their primary motives for forming? Police brutality. All right, police brutality. This is 1966 when they actually formed. And again, I mentioned 1947 with the secure their rights. One of the issues was police brutality. Here it is. And, you know, you can make some connections with what's happening in contemporary society today. Okay, so we always say, you know, we learn from history. Well, perhaps maybe we gotta pay a little bit more attention with it. So the Black Panther Party definitely is going to bring a militant side. What the Black Panther Party does is it does two things. Or if we look at Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, it brings the direct action of Martin Luther King, but the rhetoric of Malcolm X. And they're able to bring that together. And they'll be around, this particular Black Panther Party will be around for about 10 years. Any organization like the Black Panther Party, the American Indian Movement, National Organization for Women, any of those that are forming at this time are definitely going to be scrutinized by the FBI and local authorities. And so those are going to be some of the hurdles and challenges. But then also engaging in a sense of militancy also in some ways is we're going to find out, does it help or hurt the civil rights cause? Okay, any other thoughts here? Okay, let's pop into Schoology here, because in Schoology, nope, that's not the one. In Schoology here, let's get to the right place. Here we go. Let's get to Black activism. All right, so let's pop into Schoology here. We're going to look at Black activism. Up to now, we've looked at some of the main ideas of civil rights. We've looked at some leaders like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. We've looked at some attempts to end segregation through a number of cases, events, actions, and had some success. But it is by 1965, some might be getting a little frustrated, right? And so if you open that up, All right. Oh, wrong thing. There we go. It's going to look something like this here as soon as it opens up. And the links do work. I have checked them out. I checked them out this morning, so hopefully they still work now. And what we want to look at is how does the message begin to change and how it becomes embodied in some new groups and what kind of success. So SNCC, all right, which stands for Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. By 1966, one would say the only thing that's nonviolent about SNCC is its name. So that tells you John Lewis had been a member of SNCC. He is actually going to be voted out of this organization, voted out of a leadership role in this organization. And SNCC becomes in a different direction here. Of course, the idea, a concept known as Black Power, which is embodied in Black Panthers, but is closely tied to a guy by the name of Stokely Carmichael. And then also we see the emergence of the Black Panther Party. Of course, we have a link here about Martin Luther King Jr., and he's going to have his views on Black nationalism. Because remember, with Martin Luther King Jr., he is, again, nonviolent, civil disobedience, all about integration. That might, again, conflict with some that are talking about Black nationalism. And then, of course, the big historical question here is, did Black Power hinder the civil rights movement? This actually had been an exam question on the IB Paper 3 history exam. At one point, I used to be a reader for IB History, Paper 3. And I remember the first time I was a reader, this was a question that was brought up. And okay, very doable. All right. So this is really beginning to get you to look at how the movement begins to change its messaging. And if that's going to be a good or a bad thing, that's up for you to decide with that. Okay. So that is going to be our focus for today. All right. And it is due 11:59 today. Okay. Any questions about this? Your task? Okay. All right. So those at home, you can either stay on, ask questions, or exit and have a great day. Those that are here, let's just work away.